Every team on the grid likes to make bold claims about improving each year and challenging for championships in the future, but few are actually capable of making that happen. Aston Martin might just have a chance though. They have a new driver, a new factory on the way, and a brand new car for 2023. They made massive improvements throughout 2022, and now, thanks to their technical director, we know that there are going to be a huge number of changes for 2023. Let's see what Aston Martin has planned for 2023 and try to work out how close they are to winning a championship title. Aston Martin struggled early in the season. The car turned up at the occasional track, but it was never a regular point scorer. As the races passed by though, Aston Martin made gains, and by the end of the season, they were able to fight with McLaren and Alpine for points on a regular basis. They needed a bit of luck on their side most of the time, but there were some very obvious improvements, especially compared to their competitors Alfa Romeo, AlphaTauri and Haas. Part of that improvement may have been down to the change in regulations mid-season. The new era of Formula 1 began with ground effect aerodynamics coming onto the grid at the start of the year, with the cars now generating a significant amount of downforce from air going underneath the bodywork, in a complete change from the previous generation. As a result, most of the cars suffered from the effects of porpoising, endangering their drivers and sapping precious lap time. The FIA eventually intervened with a technical directive to limit the amount of vertical oscillations a car can have per lap to protect the drivers from the worst effects of porpoising. But with that came a need to raise the ride height of the cars, and Aston Martin technical director Dan Fallows said that comes at a cost to the performance they could generate as a result. The new floor regulations are not an enormous change in reality, but they have had a reasonable dent in terms of the downforce that the cars are able to produce, Fallows told the media on a tour of their new factory. So we've had to struggle to try and overcome that deficit, as well as everybody else will do. I think it's difficult to say whether some teams will be more effective than others, but certainly for us, it was a reasonably significant downforce hit. What we're obviously hoping for is what the FIA are hoping for as well, is that it will help with everybody's aerodynamic oscillations, which we're obviously very keen to get rid of. While Dan might say that the 15mm increase in floor edge height for 2023 will have a big effect on his team's performance, they dealt with the regulations change midway through the season incredibly well. Their competitive step forward coincided nicely with the introduction of the Technical Directive, or TD 039. This was a rule change that addressed porpoising for 2022 by using sensors in the car to ensure that no car was bouncing at a level that was unsafe for the drivers. Technical Director Tom McCullough said the TD had had little effect on Aston Martin's performance. I think for us, the TD maybe affected some of the other teams, but that didn't really have an impact on our operating the car, he told the media. We actually brought quite large floor updates to several events. Obviously Singapore was the final one, but we had one in Paul Ricard as well as Silverstone. Actually, some of our updates, the ones that look physically smaller, have actually produced the most performance as well. For us, it's just been about, right, we're here. How do we just keep developing on this car? The mark of a title challenging F1 team is their ability to continue development throughout the season with positive results. It isn't enough to be quick at race 1. You have to be quick at the last race of the season as well, with everyone around you getting quicker as the races go by. Aston Martin were able to do that this year, constantly matching or exceeding the development speed of those around them. They were able to find avenues for exploration, and then had a team of engineers who could exploit those avenues. Their ingenious rear wing is a perfect example of this. To make this happen though, you have to be able to correlate the work in the simulations and wind tunnel to the real world. This is something Aston Martin absolutely nailed. The bits that we bought from the wind tunnel to the track have actually largely all done what they should have been doing, he said. Which was just all the time giving us a bit more performance, but also a bit wider operating window on the car. Ultimately, the cost cap is quite a key thing there. The car we have in the wind tunnel at the moment for 2023 is very different to the one we've got now. This is why their ability to improve throughout 2022, thanks to some excellent modelling techniques, is so important for 2023. Even though they won't have a chance to run the new car until the pre-season practice at the end of February in Bahrain, they can make big changes to the car and be confident that the simulated gains will be reflected on track, something that Mercedes failed at for most of 2022. Pressed for further details on what lessons the team have learned and whether there'll be significant differences to the team's design concept for next season, McCullough laughed. "I can't tell you that. There are some philosophies that are still the same, some that are different, So overall, we're hoping to have a faster car. Without the cost cap, you'd have seen more of those updates during the year. We're still running round on the launch nose and front wing philosophy largely. A lot of that would normally have changed during a normal year, but you can't just afford to do that on such big expensive parts under the budget cap. The fact he specifically mentions the front wing and nose could hint at changes being made there. They could have been developing upgrades in the factory, but then did not have the budget to actually build and ship them. Aston Martin could be a real contender next year if the work they're doing in the factory this winter works out as well as it has throughout the 2022 season. It isn't just their factory work though that could have a huge effect on what the car looks like next year. Their new driver could make a difference as well. Sebastian Vettel leaving and Fernando Alonso joining is as close as a like-for-like change as you can get in Formula 1. Both drivers have incredibly successful pasts and are now considered legends of the sport, who've just been in the wrong team for a few years. The difference they will bring is how they feed back to the engineers and how their personal preference in car style will affect what the 2023 Aston Martin looks like. Fernando Alonso was very impressive on his first outing for Aston Martin, team principal Mike Crack says. The two-time champion, now 41 years old, had a day's testing for Aston Martin in Abu Dhabi to prepare for his move from Alpine for the start of next season. Crack said Alonso was immediately fast, adding the efficiency of transmitting messages was very impressive. It was straight to the point at all times, very friendly, open and transparent. Crack said he believed Alonso's determination and will to win would have a transformative effect on Aston Martin. With Fernando, I always hold up this picture of this year's Mexican Grand Prix, of his frustration at not having finished 7th because the car broke down. This is an example of dedication and motivation. So if you have someone with this passion and drive to win, it has an impact on the team. And we could clearly see that everybody was really happy to have this guy in the car last Tuesday. So I think he ignited maybe another spark from his passion and desire to win onto the team. Sebastian Vettel was an incredible driver and definitely helped Aston Martin push on this season. But knowing that his retirement was just around the corner will have made a difference to how he interacted with the team. At times during the season, especially before he announced his retirement, he cut a dejected figure. He was clearly unhappy with the car and with what was happening in his career. Once he handed in his resignation letter, do you think he was still giving the same level of feedback? When you know you're leaving a job, it can be hard to stay motivated, to push hard to help your company in the future, because you won't see any reward for that. Do you think Seb felt the same? With Fernando in place, a new factory almost finished, and a fantastic correlation between their modelling software, aero testing and on-track data, Aston Martin are in a great place for 2023. At the start of 2021, having taken over the Racing Point entry, Aston Martin set its sights on winning the World Championship within 5 years. From the way we started the year, I think we were behind schedule, said Crack of 2022's progress. But I think we caught up well. I think in year 3, we need to set a clear improvement, a clear step in terms of performance. And yeah, I would say we're on target. If Aston Martin are serious about winning a championship by 2025, and from what we've seen they definitely are, then the 2023 Challenger could be an absolute beast. Whatever the huge differences are in the car, they're guaranteed to help them climb the grid. Do you think Aston Martin can challenge the top 3 next year? Let us know your opinion in the comments below, and until next time, drive safe and bye for now.